Now it's time to improve how our game looks. Right now the colors are a bit grayish and, well, it's looking quite dull actually. We want the colors to pop more, to be more cartoonish, and the first thing that we're going to work on is improving the shadows. So right now we have a shadow distance about here. We're going to increase the shadow distance. Then we are going to work on the lighting in general a little bit, and finally we're going to add some post-processing to make sure that the colors are really popping. First of all, let's look at our directional light here. We are right now using soft shadows and want it to be hard shadows to sort of fit the theme of the game a little bit more. And the strength of the shadows, they are super dark right now, so I think that we can reduce that to 0.6 and or even less, but I think we'll go with 0.6 so we can see the shadows, or 0.5 I think. Yeah, 0.5. Anyway, then we have a maximum shadow. As well, when we are exiting play mode, these changes will revert, so remember to change them back. Alright. The second part is the shadow, how far away the shadows are being drawn. And if we go at edit, project settings, quality, and then we'll click on the rendering pipeline assets, which highlights whichever we're using. So that brings up our settings on the right side here of our the quality, including our shadows. So right now we can look at our shadows resolution, which is maximum. So if we reduce this, we can see that we have well, more ugly shadows. But let's keep it at 4096. And the distance, well, I think it's about here 50. We can see that if we bring it to 90, we have a little bit further ahead. So 50 is the current one, but 70 I think will be optimal, because then we're seeing these parts as well. The problem is that this can affect the quality of the overall shadow resolution, because we have 4096 to cover all of these areas. And what we can do is we can ensure that the quality is better around the car. I think actually it looks quite okay as it is, but if we look at these cascades, we have 4 cascades, which means that it is distributing the resolution sort of, or the size of our shadow resolution. So if we bring the first split to a higher value, we can see that it's going to be jagged, because it's trying to use that quality over a larger area. So that is something that we need to have close to the car. And right now ahead of the car, I think it's like 4 meters, something like that. Let's bring it to 4 actually. And then we have the second cascade here, and actually let's bring this out. So if we look at these values, we can see that when we are changing these values, we can see it on the wall here of this orange building, that the resolution of that shadow is changing as well. And then further down the road, I think it's going to be hard to actually see any difference, but yeah, we can see it on this building here, which is further away, that it's changing a tiny little bit, but it's really hard to see. So if we have it like that, we can see that, yeah, there are some jagged areas. But I think that if we have it something like this, yeah, you can play around with it, and you can go a little bit forward to see how it actually influences the game. As well, what you need to do is you need to check the normal bias. It's already at 0, but if you have a high bias, you can see that you have some artifacts here. So put it to 0, that will remove our artifacts, and then uncheck soft shadows. Okay, so now we have our hard shadows, and they are looking a little bit better, and they're a little bit further ahead. So I think this setting is the one that we will go for. So let's exit play mode, and remember, bring back our settings here to 0.5 and hard shadows. Okay, so that's our shadows. The second part is our lighting, the light that influences the scene. And right now we have a very strong directional light. It's intensity 2. So if we bring it to 1, we can see that, okay, now the scene is a lot darker, but if we have very bright lights, it's going to look strange as well. So we want the colors to sort of pop more, but we don't want this gray tone. And part of the gray tone is actually because of our lighting settings. So if you go to our lighting settings, we have our environmental lighting, which comes from the skybox. So if you change that to gradient instead, we can see that there is a change in the darkness of our sort of the shadowed parts, and it actually makes it pop more and become less gray and dull. And that's the environmental reflections. But let's bring those to custom, and the source, let's bring it to gradient instead. So here we can see the difference between our skybox source gradient. So we want to have it as the gradient, and then we can change our sky colors to become more or less bright, and the same with the equator. And usually what you can do is you can disable our light and have a look at, okay, how does our overall scene look without any lights? And then you can adjust the colors here to make it look as you want, and then you bring on the lights. But for now, I think we are okay as it is, and we are going to keep our settings and then apply our post-processing to this. But let's remember to bring back our source to gradient and custom. Okay, so now it's time to tune our post-processing, and if we look at our main camera, make sure that post-processing is enabled, and as well that you have a global volume. Right now we have the default sample scene profile here, and instead we're going to create a new one, and let's move it into settings as well, and call it stage post processing, and override it with that instead. All right, so we can see now that we have a global volume that will affect everything, which has a weight 1, and you can have different volumes and have the camera sort of trigger which one is going to be active, and you can blend between them using weights. But we're just going to use this simple one profile. And if we start by adding some bloom, so we can see that actually it works. So let's bring up the intensity to 10. We can now see that, okay, our bloom is working, but it's way too much. So let's bring our intensity down to 1, and 0.9 in the threshold is, I think, is going to be fine. And we can leave all of the settings as is, but if you want something with more bloom, then just increase it, but let's not go crazy. The second part is going to change our tones in our scene. So right now we have this a little bit still grayish look, and let's go with tone mapping. So change that. So neutral, I think for me, is still a little bit grayish, and well, remove some of the colors. Instead we're going to go with ACES, which you can see that it reduces sort of our gray tones, and it makes everything more sharp. So the red becomes more red, the shadows becomes even stronger, and I think this look makes this game look better compared to this grayish part. And then we want to pop the colors more, so we're going to go with color adjustments, and we want to have a change to our contrast here. So our contrast is how much our colors are going to pop. So a low value, well, it makes it very gray, and a high value makes our contrast even larger between the sort of color areas and the bright areas. So let's not go crazy on this one. I think 17, around 20 is fine. And then we have the last part, which is the saturation, which is how much our colors are going to pop. So this one really is a big changer for our game. And if you have it on an extremely high value, well, it looks very cartoonish, but it's a bit too much, I think. So let's bring it around to 40, something like that. And then as well, we are going to add a little bit more post-processing effects. So I said before that we when we are driving, we have our fake horizon here, which makes things not pop, which is good. So nothing is popping up, but as well, maybe we want to make it a little bit more blurry, and instead of just using a fog which makes everything gray, we're going to use a depth of field instead. So let's add a depth of field and add mode, and we're going to use Gaussian and start at, so if we start at 1 and end at 150. So the start is where, well, logically where it should start and where it should end. So we want it to be quite far ahead of the camera. We don't want to blur this section, we just want to blur the last part of it. So 60 is the area here, and then we are going to say that, okay, where is it going to end at? 100, 150, it doesn't matter because we only see a certain section. So I think 60 and 150 will be good. Then we are blurring, so the focal point of where the player is looking, which makes it look a lot better. So now we have our post-processing set up, and I think it produces a big difference between this and that, and this and that. So this makes it look more interesting. Then of course we can work on our light to make it well, more sort of less what do you call it? This is a warmer light and this is a cooler light, but the default setting that we had is quite okay, and you can use a filter as well to bring in a more section of our specific color. But I think overall it looks okay. Maybe our dark sections here became a little bit too dark with the ACES. So if you look at that, it's still quite dark. And what we can do is we can work with the camera rotate or the directional light rotation to make sure that it's actually lighting up exactly from a little bit more from behind of the car. So we can have a look at how that would look. So this is, if we put it at 0, it's going to be exactly behind the car. And yeah, so if we move it to the other side, then of course this section of the building is going to be less bright. So I think we leave it at -30, and instead we can work on our lighting setup to make sure that it actually gets more light from the ambient light instead. So the thing that is controlling this side is going to be mostly the equator color. So if we bring up the equator color, we can see that, okay, we are getting rid of that extreme darkness. But one problem is that everything is becoming very bright in the scene. And part of it is actually our directional light, which has this intensity of 2, which is a lot. So let's bring it to 1.5 instead, and then change the equator color to be, I mean, it was very dark, it was something like that, but I think it could still be dark. just not that dark. Something like that. So we need to remember 1.5 and the equator color here. So let's bring it to RGB or not. Let's copy the color here. So we get a copy of that. Because when we are exiting, it's going to revert, right? And then direction light was 1.5. So now we should have resolved this very dark sides on the right side, and we have quite bright colors, which I like. So now it looks a lot more cartoonish and a lot better. So we can compare to what we had, which was this, compared to this. So I think it is a big difference. And of course you can tweak it even more to make sure that you're getting exactly the colors that you want. And another way that you can work with this with the shadows is to add an override for that as well. So what we have is lift, gamma and gain, or shadow and midtones. So these are as well values that you can work with to make sure that you're getting more fine control of your colors. But I think for now we're not going to overdo it. We're just going to do some basic coloring, and this is a big improvement. And I think I will leave that as it is, but then you can work on the global volumes and make the changes you want. So now our game is looking better, but we can do some more improvements. For instance, the lights of the car is actually not working because it's using a single material, and it's not separated. We can see that we have the wheels, but the lights are not separated. But we can do a sort of a quick hack to get this to work. So in materials, I've created a new emissive texture, which is this white part, red part and yellow part. Those are the parts where the traffic lights are actually mapped in the regular texture map. But I've created this one specifically for the lights of the car. So if we create a new material and call it car, and then in our base map, let's just pick the city build bits one, and then in our emission, enable that one and select our city bits emissive. So now that we've done that, and if we turn up the emissive factor, we can see that actually nothing happened because I need to assign it as well. So let's go and assign that to our car. So there we go. Now we have an emissive color of both the front part of our headlights and the rear parts, which is maybe not desirable, but yeah, that's a quick hack at least. So 4 is quite a lot. I would say it's maybe around 2.5. So if we drive with this on, it will look a little bit better, and we can also hook it up, so when we are braking it increases. Now the light in our scene is quite strong, so we don't see it, but if we go dark mode, we can see that it actually does light up a bit. So what we will do is we will use this and have maybe -2 when we're driving, and when we're hitting the brakes we'll go up to something like that, 3 maybe. 2.5, 3. So let's add that and code it in so it works from with our brakes. So let's go on the scripts and open the car handler. So to be able to change our color of our emissive material, we need access to our mesh renderer. So let's do a serialized field, mesh renderer, and we'll call it car mesh renderer. Then we need to change our emissive value of it, and we are actually going to cache it to improve performance. So let's create an integer, call it _emission color, and take it from shader property to ID emission color. So this speeds it up a little bit because we don't have to fetch it every frame. Then we need some variables to control this. So let's add a color, emissive color, and we'll default to white because that's the color that we're going to use as a base color. And then we need a multiplier, which is the HDR value, so that we can have a really bright color. Alright, so after that we are going to check if we have assigned our car renderer. Maybe in the future we have AI that shouldn't change the lights color. So, but for now we are just gonna check if it's null. And if it's not null, then it means that we can actually set the value. So we'll do car mesh renderer material set color with the emissive color, and then we'll do emissive color times the multiplier. So this is the value that is going to change either up or down when we are braking. And we'll create a variable called desired car emissive color multiplier 2, or actually 2, we can just remove that. Desired car emission color multiplier, which starts at 0. But if we are braking, then we want this variable to change. And we want it to go to 4, I think it was. Okay, so if we're then hitting the brake button, this becomes 4 instantly, but we want to lerp it over time. So we are then going to do a mathf lerp. So let's lerp it. And what are we lerping? We are lerping our emission color multiplier. And we're doing it from what value? Or actually to what value? So it's going to be our multiplier, the desired multiplier value. And then we need to do it over time. Time dot delta time and maybe times 4 to make it faster. And then we need to store the result of that. So this will then lerp and change the value emissive color multiplier, which then will change our emissive color, how bright it becomes. Okay, so let's save that and take it for a spin in Unity. Then we need to make sure that we are actually assigning our car model here. So let's assign that to car mesh renderer, and then we can try it. So if we are going forward and we're hitting the brake button, we can see that they're lighting up. But as I said before, the scene is quite bright, so it's hard to see it. But if we disable the lights, then when we are braking, it becomes much more apparent. Now there is one negative side of this, and it's actually that the front lights as well is affected by our braking here. So if we do that, hit pause, we can see that the front lights colors are coming on. But if you want to change that, then you need to separate these from inside your UV mapping, and you can make a separate material. But that's at least is a quick hack to well, make sure that we get some brake colors from the brake lights. I'd like to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters. It helps us with every single contribution that we can get. So please consider supporting us on Patreon. The link is in the description. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.